What's going on, y'all? This is Greg. Greg said it. Y'all, we're in week 2 already. Got Delaware coming up. Colorado took a loss to Georgia Tech, 27-20. And it's been a lot of conversation about it. And I guess you look at it a few different ways, really. Depending on how you want to ride this thing. I've heard different content creators. I've heard haters. I've heard fanboys, whatever you want to call it. But it's strange how everything is about the lens you use. And when you look at it, Colorado, they say, could have lost very bad if Georgia Tech didn't fumble. I don't know how you can prove that if that wasn't the case. That's a hypothesis. It's the same hypothesis as if Colorado, if they had scored touchdowns on those turnovers, the game would have been over. And Colorado really didn't necessarily earn a couple of those, just mistakes by Georgia Tech. And even I was like, oh, man, I don't want to go out like this because you're not going to get credit, right? Georgia Tech just going to be sorry. Everybody saying Georgia Tech is a very good team. They're not. They're Georgia Tech. They're Georgia Tech every year. Georgia Tech has a ceiling. That's what they have. They have a ceiling. Their ceiling is limited by the play of their quarterback and how healthy he is. They're only going to go as far as he goes. He's already limping and going around. He didn't make it through last season. And it don't look like he's making it through this year because he's already hobbling. He has to run the ball a whole lot as a quarterback and take a lot of unnecessary hits. It's limited. It's limited to him and maybe a couple other players, but primarily him. He by far had the most yards. They don't have a strong passing game. Defense really wasn't exposed. They really didn't stop Colorado. Colorado's silly behind stopped themselves. Colorado's stuff that worked, they didn't continue to do it like Georgia Tech did. The running game was working. They was very fickle with it. Even some of the personnel, Taylor coming out of the backfield, matchup nightmare speed, like Dylan Edwards, basically. They didn't treat him like how they treat Dylan Edwards, as far as how they used him, like get him out there and just make a nightmare with who gonna cover him? Linebacker, who gonna cover him? He was open a lot. He was pretty much the most productive receiver, yet he was barely used. Colorado did not attempt at all to take advantage or exploit Georgia Tech's weaknesses. They just bounced around like a kid playing PlayStation. It was no strategy and it was no scheme that was put in place. It seemed like they're going to be their go-to, their identity, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't there. And like Georgia Tech, they were going to keep running that quarterback till you knock him out because they knew that was their bread and butter. Colorado, understandably, has a lot of new players and new this and new that, and it showed. It's never the talent. That's what happened with them last year. They struggled with North Dakota State and things like that. It was that, they haven't jailed, but they should have enough talent to win. Colorado should have enough talent to beat Georgia Tech. I'm going to say it again. Georgia Tech is not a good team. I mean, they're good. They're average. But the ACC is back. Miami looking good. Florida State back looking good. Syracuse looking decent. You're going to see maybe SMU continue to play well. Clemson is fairly consistent. It's not necessarily a conference that Georgia Tech is just going to dominate. Now, the only reason Georgia Tech could have a good season this year when I look at their schedule is because they don't play most of them. They got about 3-4 cupcake games, and then they still playing Wake Forest, Duke. They can beat those teams. They don't really have to play a lot of them. They got a good bracket. They don't play Florida State, Miami. I think they play Syracuse. But they can lose a couple games, and you can say, Georgia Tech good. Because of the schedule, just like how Miami did last year. Miami was all right, but it showed in the end when they started playing more challenging teams. But they barely made it past Cal and Virginia Tech and all. They barely made it past, there was questionable games. Miami had a weak ACC schedule. ACC is not that good, but it's some parts of it that's starting to develop. So Georgia Tech, thankfully, don't have to play most of that. So they could look good, but they're not. They're Georgia Tech. They are an average 7 to 8 win team. And it would be the case if they had to play Florida State and Miami this year. And, Clemson's going to give them a little taste, and I think they might play Syracuse. So they could lose a couple games and look good. But Colorado, on the other hand, has a dilemma. not only does Colorado have an identity issue, but they have a play calling issue, a play calling identity issue. When you look at what kind of plays are they going to call, what is going to be, the strength of the team. They can run the ball better, the line is better, but then you also got to look at, okay, you've got all these receiver weapons. And it's like, even when you listen to people, they're all over the place. They're like, we should run the ball more, but we need to throw it more. Like, which one do you want? Balance what? And then if you're going to throw it more, is Salter that guy? Salter has an arm, but he has accuracy issues. He has even accuracy issues on little short drops to the flats, to the running back. He can overthrow him and things like that. So it's not, he don't really have necessarily a strength. Like, usually a guy is very good with throwing short routes. And he's all right, intermediate and deep. And then some people really good intermediate deep. Salter hasn't really shown he mastered either one. I thought he could do little short routes, and he was kind of in and out. He was kind of all over the place with that. Deep ball, he can throw it over your head because he has an arm, but not necessarily accurate. So here we are in the dilemma. Who are you going to use to tap into your resources the most? If the receivers are going to be the bread and butter of your team, unfortunately, Juju might be your guy. Meaning, you're going to have to sit your senior down, your dual threat down, because he's not been a dual threat. He's trying to be balanced and this and that, when really he should have took the game in his hands like King did and got those yards. It ain't that you saying he can't throw. We got to do what you got to do to get the first downs. Well, you could have, what you want him to take the touchdown or the first down? Take the first down. Because he improved, he can throw the touchdown consistently. He wasn't accurate. But we know his legs work. And we know that we can trust that he's going to get that first down more so than him throwing the ball inaccurately or the guy dropping the ball. Why risk that? Get the first down, move the chains, keep your defense off the field, put their defense on the field. It's a lot of things game management wise, like when he ran out of bounds instead of getting down, taking time out, clock management issues and not really knowing what's going on. Not really having a true, I don't know if it was communication or just understanding the game. Not understanding the game. That's the problem that he's having. And it's like, it's a disadvantage to have a guy that age, because you probably would expect that out of your 17-year-old freshman. And you got a fifth-year senior going against a fifth-year senior, and one looked like he ain't been playing. Salter made decisions. He didn't play bad. He wasn't like fumbling the ball. And in that way, he played better. He wasn't throwing interceptions. But probably worse than interceptions, he wasn't completing and he wasn't converting on those short drives. A little less 3 and outs would have gone a long way. And there's no excuse for somebody of his caliber when he dropped back and the Red Sea or the Green Sea opened up, that he don't take advantage of that, because Georgia Tech quarterback show was. I feel like it was more lanes for Salter, bigger lanes and more grass for Salter than it was for King. King was just running right past the guys. He wasn't really getting big runs. His biggest run came at the end of the game when he somewhat walked in the end zone. It was because it was a bust. You had a bunch of new guys they were trying to put. Colorado was trying to figure themselves out. They should have put 20-some defensive guys out there. So everybody can't say they didn't get a chance. But they were just trying to, different safeties was playing, different linebackers were playing, different D-line was playing. A true situation where you got a bunch of guys who are new to the team. And Colorado, unfortunately, still trying to figure it out. Yet, they only lost by 7 points. Now, people try to play that off and say, well, they should have lost by more. Well, they should have won by more, too. Everybody, I don't want to hear what shoulda, woulda happened, because it shoulda, wouldas on both sides. Colorado left as many opportunities on the field as Georgia Tech. Yet, it was a close game, literally into the end. Colorado could have put away the game, punt the ball back to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech scored. Colorado had a minute, busted up the clock situation. And so they still was in the game with all the just inconsistencies and just dysfunction, which is expected in a sense. That's why it's almost like you'd rather them play the cupcake games. Like Georgia Tech has cupcake games after this. They got a couple cupcake games, then they got one at the end, like a lot of other SEC teams do. They play one like at the end. Right before they play Georgia, they play like Gardner-Webb. Colorado going to be busting it all the way through. They're going to have these couple of games, and they're going to run it all the way through with conference games. And all them conference games on the back end going to matter, because it's going to determine if they get in or not. and everybody looked like they playing good. Even TCU looked like they playing good. I mean, before this game, you can say, oh, it look like Colorado got an easy ride, but not really, because this conference is built for the running quarterback and the running game. It was that before Colorado even got there. That's why it amazes me that people make the comment, oh, they're not going to face anybody like this again. Yeah, they can face something like this and even better. Because realistically, Kansas State, hey, you say they not all that, but they quarterback can run the mess out the ball. And they put Dylan Evans, some decent running back there. They lost their big-time running back last year, but he's a dynamic run threat at quarterback. I mean, Houston, if they have their same quarterback, same thing. TCU, Utah when they got a dual threat. It ain't nothing but dual threat quarterbacks who will run the ball on you. We know our state quarterback will take over. That's all he did last year. If he need to get a first down, he running it. That's what we thought Salter would be a good fit into this conference, because that's what everybody else doing. If you ain't going to have a Shedeur, at least have that. Because if your passing game shutting down, if your running game there, it's hard to count for that quarterback, especially the athletic one. And Salter's definitely that. He slid in the end zone one time. Salter could have easily had 3 touchdowns just like the other. And he could have kept that game in more control, especially in that first half. Dropping back, getting 3 and outs, being complacent with a 7-0, 7-3 lead. Colorado played very complacent until next, Georgia Tech jumped up on them. Then the next, it was what? It was 10-3. Then it was 10-10. Then it was 10-13. And it was nickel and dime, all the way up. And yet we want to say Georgia Tech dominant, because you wanted to say that all along. You wanted to believe Colorado is not good. You wanted to believe that Georgia Tech was so much better. Georgia Tech is not as good as people trying to sell them to be. And now we really sell them because we want to justify losing to them. But the reality is Georgia Tech is an average team. They're very much similar to the teams you're going to play in your conference. They can function and they can beat you if you don't do the fundamental things. But they don't have exceptional playmakers. They don't have knock you down receivers. The quarterback can't run up the score with his arm. If you stop that, if you put the right defense and the right personnel in the game, and you're scheming and you watch film and you got actual plan for this crap and you execute it, you shouldn't have a problem with them kind of teams, because you're only really watching a couple guys. And one guy primarily. If you stop him, you stop their whole offense. That's what we seen last year at UCF. We had to stop their running game. The running back, now with the Broncos, you gotta stop them. Big quarterback, you gotta stop them. You did, and look how the game turned out. It's the same thing with most of these teams in this conference. And really Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is that. It's a measurement of what you're going to see the rest of the season. It's not that's the best you're going to see. I doubt it. Because they got some good running quarterbacks in this conference. And Georgia Tech defense really is not that great. I think Georgia Tech was a better team last year. I watched them pretty closely. I had a cousin on the team, as I said before. I think their defense was a little better last year. We didn't really exploit the defense this year. We went out there with the mismatched play calling, and they really ain't stop you. They really didn't. You stopped yourself by getting away from the run. You stopped yourself by making your quarterback be something that he's not. And he wasn't effective. He was throwing incompletions, and he wasn't willing to make up for it with his legs. And he made it easy on Georgia Tech. So we don't really know what Georgia Tech can do, because Georgia Tech played a poor version of Colorado. Colorado has an issue. They got a lot of weapons, and they ain't quite figured out how to use them. They got weapons. I look at even Harge. I didn't see him out there. I've been talking about him for the last 2 years. He's a two-way player like a Travis Hunter, but they don't use him. They don't respect him like a Travis Hunter, but they like him. But he's a dynamic playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. But they still ain't using him. They have some speed over there. Yeah, they got Taylor. I think Harge could be used. You got Gibson. They got a lot more speed and a lot more playmakers than Georgia Tech have, and a lot more than anybody they play. That's the reality. But what's good is if you ain't using them. You got a few good tight ends. You ain't using them barely. That could be a pass threat. You got some exceptional receivers that's only touched the ball one time that you just brought in. Exceptional receivers. Georgia Tech will wish they had them guys. But they ain't trying to be nobody but themselves. Let our quarterback do all this motion and let our quarterback run the ball. That's what they did. Salter don't have to do that. That would make Salter more dangerous than anything. He don't have to. And what I was saying all offseason is because he has so many dynamic receivers, it's a catch-22. It's like, do you go after those guys or do you watch Salter? You watch Salter, those guys open. So Salter really is in a more advantage than King because King don't have the weapons. He got a decent running back. He don't really have the weapons at the receiver core. Yeah, the defense got to step up. Yeah, we know that. That's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother video. We'll be talking about that probably later in the week because it shows they don't tackle at practice. I talked about that all year. And really last few years, they don't tackle at practice and they tagging and it shows on how they get to the ball, how effective they are with tackling. Yeah, they'll be there and they'll make contact, but they're not great with tackling. That's part of it. Then you're trying to figure out the personnel that don't help. I think it'll take a few games for them to figure out the personnel because you keep having to rebuild every year when it comes to find who go in. They're going to do it again next year because a lot of these guys are seniors. People don't realize how many seniors Colorado has. They're in the portal, but there's a lot of seniors. So they just got to figure that out. And unfortunately, the first few games is when you're trying to figure it out. Hopefully your talent carry you. That's what it did last year. They said Delaware could be decent and fundamental. It may not be a blowout game. Who knows? We shall see. I'm just Greg said it. Make sure y'all like, share, subscribe, comment. I'll be talking to y'all soon.